Here are the cereals that I actually bought for my family. Organic sprouted lentils, organic sprouted soybeans, organic malted barley, organic sprouted spelt. I mean, it's full of sprouted grains as well as beans. It's very rare. Hi friends, I searched 5 supermarkets and superstores and reading through probably over 50 different cereal labels. And believe it or not, I actually bought 3 boxes of cereal to feed my family. I have here a serving size of 2 of these boxes of cereal. This is half a cup. This is 1 serving size. So this is 1 whole cup. This is another serving size. Tell me if this is how you eat for breakfast. This is like a serving size for a small child. But it's not just children who eat cereal. So if you're a cereal fan or shopping for the healthiest cereal for your family, let me show you the 3 simple rules that I follow. Number 1 is that I always read ingredient labels starting in the middle. Now, the chemicals that we don't need in our body, such as the food dyes and artificial sweeteners, are usually buried towards the end of the ingredient labels. However, when it comes to cereals, they actually fortify lots of cereals with vitamins and minerals. So that actually is at the end of the ingredient labels. And therefore, the chemicals get stuck in the middle. So I start reading the ingredient labels right before they start listing all the vitamins and minerals. For example, look at Lucky Charms. Before vitamin E, you're going to see food coloring, yellow 5, and blue food coloring. Nobody needs these ingredients in our body, and especially if you're eating it every single day. So as soon as I find food coloring, I just put that back. Now, the second rule is to look for the word sugar, and it shouldn't be the first, second, or third ingredient on the label. Now, I hate to pick on Lucky Charms, but it is a very good example. The second ingredient on Lucky Charms is sugar. There's more sugar in that box of Lucky Charms than the third ingredient, corn flour. What about corn flakes? If you follow the 2 rules, then you know that corn flakes actually pass the first rule because there's nothing artificial in it, but it can't pass the second rule because sugar is the second ingredient. Let's now look at Cheerios, which is a very popular cereal for toddlers. Now, it passes the first rule because it doesn't have any artificial ingredients, but sugar is the third ingredient. However, the second ingredient is cornstarch, which turns into sugar as well. It just doesn't taste as sweet as sugar. But if you put cornstarch and sugar together, you have yourself powdered sugar. So Cheerios is really made out of whole grain oats and powdered sugar. Here is fiber 1. Let's just follow my 2 simple rules. First, is there anything artificial? So I'm going to look in the middle of the ingredient label above the vitamins and minerals. And right there, you see the last word, sucralose, which is an artificial sugar. Sucralose doesn't even belong in the environment, let alone in our bodies. And when you're eating fiber 1, you're trying to optimize your gut health. But did you know that sucralose, as well as many other artificial sweeteners, disrupt your gut microbiome? In fact, if you regularly consume sucralose and non-nutritive sweeteners or artificial sweeteners, you can in fact increase your blood sugar levels, increase your blood sugar spikes, which is opposite of what people want to do when they want to lose weight and control their blood sugars. So if you look at the ingredient lists with fiber 1 with real honey, and if you apply my rules, number 1, you'll notice that before vitamin E is sucralose again, and before that is acesulfame. They're both artificial sugars. Sucralose has 0 calories, but is 600 times sweeter than sugar. The reason why it has 0 calories is because it's not real food. It isn't even a natural chemical. It's an artificial Frankenstein chemical created by people. Unfortunately, it's in thousands of food products now. Sure, it's been labeled as safe. I mean, a little bit of arsenic is also safe too, right? And that's why arsenic is allowed in rice and rice products, seafood, apple and grape juice, poultry, and drinking water, even though arsenic is a known carcinogen. Sucralose is known to disrupt your gut microbiome. And when you have a bowel movement, sucralose actually gets flushed in the toilet to become an environmental contaminant. And in addition, when you ingest products with sucralose, you may also be ingesting some sucralose 6 acetate, which is an impurity formed during the manufacturing process of sucralose or when you put sucralose to high heat, like baked items. Sucralose 6 acetate. It can mutate your DNA. Even though sucralose is technically a 0-calorie sweetener, it actually has the opposite effect on glucose metabolism. Human clinical trials have shown that regular consumption of sucralose worsens blood sugar control instead of improving it. Now, the second ingredient that is commonly paired with sucralose was another artificial sweetener called acesulfame potassium, which is 200 times sweeter than sugar. It too can disrupt your gut microbiome and gets flushed out to become an environmental contaminant. But this cereal is also full of different sugars: corn syrup, honey, barley malt extract, maltodextrin, molasses, brown sugar syrup. So on top of the 2 artificial sugars, it has 6 different forms of processed sugar. So now let's look at Kellogg's Crackling Oat Bran cereals. Actually, it tastes pretty good. My mom used to buy this for me as a kid, and I thought it was actually a healthy snack. So let's apply my first rule and look at the ingredients above the vitamins and minerals. And so the last ingredient is nutmeg. Not bad. It's actually a natural spice. But the ingredient right before nutmeg is soy lecithin, and that's an emulsifier, even though it's a natural product extracted from soy. But unfortunately, emulsifiers are known to disrupt your gut microbiome. And this is a problem when we extract ingredients from whole foods. It may be a natural ingredient found naturally in nature, but when you extract it, there's nothing natural about it at all. When you're eating natural whole foods, that has a different physiology to your body compared to eating extracted ingredients. Now let's look at cinnamon. I'm a big fan of cinnamon, but I'm afraid they may put the wrong kind of cinnamon, cassia cinnamon, and not true cinnamon, Ceylon cinnamon. The difference can be a toxin called Coumarin, and there may be Coumarin in the cereal because they use cassia cinnamon. I'm not sure. Now, I don't even know how much cinnamon is used in the cereal, but less than a quarter teaspoon of cassia cinnamon can be dangerous because coumarin is a liver and kidney toxin and can also thin the blood to increase bleeding time. And this is another reason why I quit eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch, even though I loved that cereal as a child. But it also fails my number 1 rule, and that's artificial ingredients. It has caramel color. And then it fails number 2, which is sugar. That's a second ingredient. And now it's failed the third test, which is, did it put the right cinnamon? And I really don't know, but I'm already not going to eat this because it failed the first 2 tests. I haven't really shopped for a box of cereal for probably over a decade. So I was shocked when I saw grain-free cereal. So instead of eating powdered grains, you're eating powdered proteins that looks like cereal. So I flipped the box over and it says it contains bioengineered food ingredients. But this is expected. I mean, you're trying to bioengineer proteins to taste and look like carbohydrates. And so many people are so concentrated on sugar that they're okay with eating non-nutritive sweeteners like allulose and monk fruit, which is the second ingredient in this cereal. So let's talk about allulose. Allulose is natural, kind of like soy lecithin. It is found in small amounts in natural fruits like figs, raisins, and jackfruit, but there's really only trace amounts. Commercially, allulose is produced through enzymatic conversion of fructose, isolated from either corn or sugarcane. Now, people think that allulose is a new solution to our obesity problem. But keep in mind, you actually can get allulose in trace amounts when you eat whole fruits. So purifying allulose to act like a drug and concentrating it is very different than eating it in its natural form in whole foods. So if you give this drug allulose to rats, it appears to improve their body weight through insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control. It also increases GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide 1 to regulate appetite. But when you stimulate glucagon-like peptide 1, you will have more than just an appetite suppressant and improved blood sugars. Recent studies have raised the concerns about a potential link between GLP-1 receptor agonists, such as semaglutide, marketed as Ozempic and Wegovy, and a rare but serious eye condition that can cause blindness called non-arteritic anterischemic optic neuropathy, NAION. And this condition can lead to sudden vision loss in one eye due to reduced blood flow to the optic nerve. This is actually the second most common cause of optic nerve-related blindness after glaucoma. Now, people with diabetes who are taking GLP-1 agonists, they have 4 times higher risk to develop this rare optic nerve condition than those taking diabetes medications. And those who were overweight or obese without diabetes actually had 7 times more likely to be diagnosed with this serious eye condition that caused blindness. And hence, again, if we're chasing weight loss in the wrong way, this can lead to unexpected and unintended health consequences. Because when our goal is weight loss or normal blood sugars and not health, then we actually don't think of all the different things that can happen to the body. So you can have a normal blood sugar and not be healthy. You can have a normal weight or lose weight and have normal liver enzymes and not be healthy. But if your goal is to get healthy, then naturally the weight loss and the blood sugars will ultimately normalize. And this is akin to fixing a plumbing problem in your home. Many people want to normalize and fix their sugar as fast as they want to fix their plumbing, or they want to lose weight just as quickly. But if your toilet doesn't flush because your plumbing is plugged up in your front yard, you can fix the problem by never ever using your plumbing again. Don't ever flush your toilet. Don't ever turn on your faucet. But if you want to flush your toilet or to use a sink, then you know it's going to be a little messy for a while because it's still plugged up in the front yard until you relieve that plug. And this is similar to people who want to just give up all carbohydrates, so they'll never see any high blood sugars or carbohydrate metabolism issues because they're never testing themselves and eating carbohydrates. That is one way to lose weight quickly. And this is because in order to gain weight, you need insulin. So if you were on an omnivorous diet and eating a lot of processed food, then all of a sudden you gave up all those processed carbohydrates and only eat fat and protein, you will dramatically see an improvement in your blood sugars as well as your weight because you're not spiking insulin. But like your plumbing, if you need to use your toilet, even when your plumbing is plugged, it'll be a little messy until you can relieve that plug from your front lawn. It takes time to correct that. And this is the messiness of allowing a whole food plant-based diet to fix the glucose metabolism issue. And you would think it would take a long time, but actually, if you totally jump-started it and took it to an A+ diet, you can actually start seeing a reversal within 2 weeks. And definitely within the week, your blood sugars will plummet. And we know now that eating a whole food plant-based diet can reverse type 2 diabetes, and that people who are vegan or vegetarian have lower body weights and better sugars. But the reality is we also know that it really doesn't matter which diet you're on. All diets can achieve weight loss if you stick to the diet. Whether it's carnivore, low carb, paleo, or vegan, it will all be effective in achieving weight loss as long as you can stick to the diet. It's also important to note that losing weight on a diet does not necessarily equate to optimal long-term health. Simply being healthier than before or healthier than those on the least healthy diets should not be the ultimate goal. Instead, the focus should be on achieving the best possible health outcomes. This raises a question: are you aiming just to be healthier than the worst case scenario or striving to reach your highest potential health? This is why I don't eat cereal. Cereal is a processed food. It's powdered food stuck together with a bunch of vitamins and minerals and other single ingredients that were extracted from the original whole foods. Ironically, the inventor of cereal was actually a medical doctor, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. And you may have heard of the brand Kellogg cereal. Dr. Kellogg invented Flakes cereal from boiled wheat to provide a healthy vegetarian option for his sanitarian patients in Michigan. Have you heard of Post cereal? Well, that was invented by a patient of Dr. Kellogg, Mr. Charles Post. So 3 years after Kellogg released his first cereal, Mr. Post in 1897 decided to be his competition and founded his own cereal company and introduced Grape-Nuts. So let's actually take a look at Grape-Nuts to see if it passes my two-step test. It doesn't actually have any artificial ingredients, so that's a perk, and it doesn't actually have any added sugars. So this cereal actually passed my first 2 tests. So let's see if this passes the 3rd test. Now, the dietary fiber is 7 grams. If you multiply that fiber by 5, you should get a total carbohydrate of 35 grams or less. But this cereal actually has 47 grams of carbohydrates. So if they're not adding sugar, how did they get those extra carbohydrates? This is because they didn't use the whole grain. They used barley flour. Even though they didn't add any sugar, they used malted barley flour, high in maltose, which is a sugar similar to fructose. So Grape-Nuts doesn't actually pass my 3 tests. Now here's a high protein cereal made out of beans, Kashi Gold Peanut Butter Cereal Crunch. So I'm going to look for, number 1, artificial ingredients. I don't see any, but I do see Acacia gum. Now, Acacia gum is an emulsifier, or it's also known as gum arabica. It may be a natural ingredient, but it's not in its natural form. Now, really, cereal isn't natural at all. And that's why people have metabolic consequences when they eat too many foods that are not in its natural form. Cereal is a powdered food. Sugar is also the third ingredient, brown rice syrup. Sounds better than sugar, but nevertheless, it is pure sugar. And then they also use cane sugar.
Oh, look at this. 3 Wishes. That's another high protein cereal. It says it's gluten free. Let's see what's in its ingredients. Oh, chickpea. I really like that. If it's a whole chickpea, I would be in favor of this cereal. Now, it does have sugar, but it's a third ingredient. And it has monk fruit. That's probably to make it taste sweeter without adding more sugar. So this one has more carbohydrates, 20 grams of carbohydrates. The fiber to carbohydrate ratio, it doesn't pass, right? 3 grams of fiber should only be 15 grams of carbohydrate. So the thing is, though, I have noticed that bean cereals generally have more carbohydrate than fiber, but I'm not quite sure how much of it is bean versus how much of it is the added sugar that they've put in it. So they've added 3 grams of sugar, which is not a whole lot considering that's a cereal. Nevertheless, a can of chickpeas has something like 13 grams of fiber and 45 grams of carbohydrate. So that would meet the 5-to-1 ratio. Oh, and you know what? It's a tapioca starch. That's what has increased the carbohydrate ratio. It's actually the starch. I missed that. But chickpea powder has a lot of protein, but not tapioca starch. So that's probably why it may taste more like a grain as opposed to bean. And I would have preferred that they use more bean. I think it would have been healthier. So between the two, this would probably be a better option just because it has beans. This is a next flavor. It's like a berry flavor. When you look at the berry flavor, it has the same 5-to-1 carbohydrate to fiber ratio. So it's not really high. Fiber needs to be higher for the amount of carbohydrates. But the ingredients are relatively clean. It has chickpea powder, tapioca. I'm not a fan of root starches, processed root starches. They're very tasty. I don't think they're better than grains. I would rather eat a whole grain than a processed root starch. So that's kind of my opinion between roots. Roots also don't have a lot of proteins. So this is another flavor and it has the same 20 grams of carbs per 3 grams of dietary fiber. That's a cinnamon flavor. Okay, so this is another protein. It's just like a lot of grain-free cereals. So this is made out of rice flour. Now, rice flour is probably high in arsenic. So I don't know if this particular brand is high in arsenic, but in general, rice has the highest amount of arsenic of all the different grains. So I avoid eating any kind of processed rice product. And then the second ingredient is organic cane sugar. So that's a lot of sugar, right? So this already fails my test. The first one was nothing artificial. And this is pretty good on that part, but number 2 would be looking for sugar, that it's not the first, second, or third ingredient. So this fails my test. Yeah, that one too. It has a lot of carbohydrates and very little fiber. That one too, a lot of carbs, very little fiber. Puffins looks like it's healthy for children, right? But again, it has a lot of peanut butter. The carbohydrate load is pretty high for very minimal fiber. And if you look at the ingredients, the second ingredient is sugar, right? We're feeding our kids sugar. Sugar disguised in pretty packaging with nice, cute cartoons, right? This will totally attract me if I was a kid because I was attracted by these things. And they're all the same, right? They all have too much carbohydrates compared to their fiber. Now, this one has more fiber, the cinnamon one. It actually almost breaks the ratio. So let's see what's in it. Okay, degermed cornmeal. So what does degermed cornmeal mean? When they take the germ out of a seed, so basically the seed has a bran, has a germ, has an endosperm. The endosperm is the starch, and the germ is where the protein is. So I don't want my corn to be degermed. I want the germ in it, right? And so when they make things like that up, it sounds fancy, but it's really actually not the right part of the corn that we should be eating. We should be eating the whole kernel, including the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. So this cornmeal is essentially starch. And then the second ingredient is whole grain oat flour. And the third ingredient is cane sugar. So the fact that, it has less sugar than the other ones, and it has 2 grains before you hit the sugar is actually a better option than the other cereals. Now, the thing about cinnamon is is this cinnamon cassia cinnamon or Ceylon cinnamon, right? Because Ceylon cinnamon is the healthier cinnamon. Cassia cinnamon has a molecule in it called coumarin. That's the fake cinnamon. And when you eat too much coumarin, then that can actually be harmful to your liver and your kidney as well as thin your blood. So I don't know what people put in because in America, we just label everything cinnamon. And a lot of our cinnamon is cassia cinnamon. It's not real cinnamon. I try to stay away from processed cinnamon products because of this. So here is a comparison of these Puffin cereals. And I'm not a fan of the Degermed cornmeal and corn flour. They both have about the same amount of dietary fiber, which is not bad. And they both almost meet my 5-to-1 ratio. The carbohydrate I would prefer under 30. So I would look for a better cereal. Okay, so this is another brand, Mom's Best. Look at that, right? It's gluten free, has little tiny cute llamas, but does it really have good quality ingredients? So number one is rice, and I just said a lot about rice. To me, a rice-based cereal I wouldn't eat. And number two ingredient is sugar, right? So Mom's Best, I mean, this isn't the only box with a ton of sugar, right? If you check your pantry, if you have sugar and you're using sugar to bake and to cook, then it's not much better than the cereal if this is primarily what you're eating. Okay, so I'm sure the carbohydrate and fiber ratio is going to be out of control, right? Look at that. It's like 37 grams of carbs and less than 1 gram of fiber. So this is essentially candy, right? So if you want to feed your kids candy, this is the way to go, right? Feeding them crunchy candy. Let's see the Raisin Bran. Okay, so the Raisin Bran actually has a whole grain wheat and has raisins and has wheat bran. So sugar is actually the fourth ingredient. So this should have a higher dietary fiber content, and it does, is 5 grams, but it should only be 25 grams of carbohydrate, but it is 43 grams. So, and I think part of that is probably because of the raisins, but they also added a bunch of sugar, 15 grams of added sugar. So we would think that the raisins would increase the sugar amount. The raisins would add to it, but they also added a bunch of added sugars. Ooh, blueberries, right? Sweetened wheatfuls. It sounds so healthy. Okay, so that's a whole grain wheat and it has dried blueberries. Okay. But it also has the second ingredient as sugar, right? And if you look at the dietary fiber, it has more fiber, but it also has a boatload of carbs. And then it put gelatin. I'm not a fan of these added ingredients, right? Especially the sugar. I'm really not a fan of the sugar. It has 50 grams of carbs. Should have definitely more fiber if I'm going to eat 50 grams of carbs. Okay, oats and honey blend, Mom's Best. Oh, wow, look at that. It's just whole grain wheat. That's it. They didn't actually add any sugar. Really? That's amazing. So it must not taste great. It has 8 grams of dietary fiber. So if you multiply that by 5, that should be 40 grams of carbohydrate. This is 48 grams of carbohydrate. So this is, I think, a better cereal. It's whole grain wheat. The whole grain, not shredded into wheat cereal, would be much better. But this at least doesn't have added sugars. Probably doesn't taste all that great, so a lot of kids probably won't eat it. Okay, let's move over to the oats and honey blend. All right, look at that. That has degermed, again, degermed yellow corn. Like, why would you degerm it? I want the germ. Like, I don't want germs, but I want the germ in the seed. So sugar is a third ingredient. Not bad, better than the other one. Look at it, has barely any fiber, right? Because they're not putting the whole corn. It's like 33 grams of carb per 2 grams of fiber. Okay, so look at this. Nature's Path, organic, golden turmeric. It sounds super fancy. And let's see, it's gluten free. All right, so here are the ingredients. Okay, so cornmeal, yellow corn flour. The third ingredient is cane sugar, right? Why do you have to keep putting so much sugar in the cereals? I do like this because it has a variety of different grains, right? Quinoa, which is like a semi grain, amaranth, as well as corn. And then it has a bunch of different spices like turmeric, black pepper, ginger. So it has 2 different kinds of sugar, cane sugar and honey. And again, I had mentioned the cinnamon part, right? You really want to be careful when you buy cinnamon, especially if you're going to eat this every day, because if it's a wrong cinnamon, if it's cassia cinnamon, then you can actually get toxic on the coumarin.
Now, I was really surprised to see a nutritional protein shake company was entering into the cereal field too. Now, I really don't know why I was surprised. It's not much of a leap to dehydrate a bunch of nutritional powder shakes and then stick it back together. But this cereal has stevia leaf extract. These are non-nutritive sweeteners that are known to disrupt the gut microbiome. And it has caramel color. Now, caramel color contains 4-methylimidazole, which has been identified as a possible carcinogen in animals. Caramel color can be made from ammonium compounds, which can have toxic byproducts, and these can cause sensitivities in people with asthma. Now, the first time I noticed caramel color was in a can of soda I used to drink called Coke and Diet Coke. But did you know that Pepsi has 20 times more caramel color than Coke? Because of Proposition 65, the sodas in California are actually healthier because there's less caramel color than those sodas sold out of state. But even in California, soda is not a healthy food unless you're drinking soda water.
The ingredients up here is an ancient wheat flour, wheat bran, whole wheat meal. Cane sugar is the fourth ingredient, so this is better. It has oat flour, spelt flour, barley flour, millet. So honestly, this one I potentially would buy, and I actually did buy for my kids, right? I thought this was an acceptable cereal because it had a variety of different grains. It met the carbs to fiber ratio, and it was a different texture. I mean, I usually wouldn't eat cereal, and I usually don't even feed cereal to my kids, but I did buy this one. And I bought this one because it passed my test. It has no artificial ingredients. It has no added artificial sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners. It doesn't have added fibers. It is basically the whole grain making up for the fiber to carbohydrate ratio. And if you look at the other flavors, the next flavor, it's a crunchy honey flavor. Has the first ingredient, rice flour. I don't like rice. And this one doesn't meet the fiber to carbohydrate ratio because rice is a low fiber food. Okay, so that didn't pass test. How about the Flax Plus, right? Multi-grain, Nature's Path, organic, right? This one's all vegan too. Well, it's whole wheat flour, whole bran flour, but the third ingredient is cane sugar, right? It probably just put too much sugar. I would expect this to not pass my second test. Actually, it did okay. It passed the second test, right? Which is 7 grams of dietary fiber and 30. So I guess they didn't put as much sugar. This would be an option if my kids really wanted to eat cereal. I would consider this, but I don't like how it is. Sugar is a third ingredient. That is one thing that I don't like. Okay, here's another one, Red Berry Crunch. I think it's better, right? Whole wheat meal, whole grain oats. Oh, number third ingredient, cane sugar. But it does have wheat bran, flax meal. I don't know why it needs soy oil, but I guess it probably makes some kind of texture difference. It has oat freeze-dried berries. I like that part. I don't like the brown rice flour. A barley malt extract, that's a type of sugar. And then rice starch, more rice. I don't really like rice. And then cinnamon. I didn't buy this. I just don't think that those ingredients worth feeding my kids, right? So you have to have the right ingredients before I read any further. And then if you look at the carb to fiber ratio, this one didn't pass. It had more carbohydrates than it did have fiber. Okay, so this one, Sunrise Crunchy Vanilla. And this one did not pass the 5-to-1 carbohydrate test. The second ingredient is brown rice flour, basically starch with arsenic. And then it has cane sugar, right? And so that's the third ingredient. So it already failed multiple tests that I have in my head. This is a maple flavored. And let's see, this one's a Heritage Crunch, another Heritage Crunch. I'm glancing at all these ingredients and then really looking at the carb to fiber ratio. Heritage Crunch, again, this one has a bunch of different kinds of ingredients that seems like it's whole food, but it's not. It's still powdered food that they glued together. But if you're going to eat powdered food that's glued together, then you may want to avoid rice ones and get a diversity of grains. When you diversify your grains, you diversify the nutrients as well as the toxins. So this one's a pumpkin raisin one. I like pumpkin. Pumpkin seeds are one of the best sources of magnesium. So I try to eat pumpkin seeds daily. I think it's just such a great, easy snack to eat. Super nutritious. But this one I didn't really like because it had rice flour and it had cinnamon. So those are the two things that I didn't quite like about it. But it also didn't meet my carbohydrate to fiber ratio, right? You have to meet my ratio. Otherwise, I'm not going to buy your box of cereal. This one is a raisin bran. Not bad. Cane sugar is the fourth ingredient. And the carb to fiber ratio qualifies 5 to 1. So 9 grams of fiber, 5 grams of carbohydrate. So this is a cereal that I would consider buying. I didn't buy it because I already bought other cereals, but I would consider buying it. Okay, look at that. Choco Chimps. Okay, so the first ingredient is corn. Second ingredient is corn. Third ingredient is sugar. So not something that I want, right? And look at the carbs to one ratio, it didn't pass. Lemurs. The third ingredient is sugar. Okay, so then you have individual flakes, which is also it's just whole food. It's processed, but it's whole food. Didn't add any sugar. So this has 41 grams of carb, 5 grams of fiber. Probably do better if you ate the whole grain. Amaranth, it's another one. It's flakes, so it's been processed a bit, right? The carbs to fiber ratio for this one didn't pass, but it does give you more diversity of grains. So if you're looking to diversify your grain and you're having absorption problems, then this could be an option because I don't think they added any sugar. Yeah, I don't think they added any sugar in this one. Okay, so next one would be this brand has sorghum. Sorghum is a good grain that is low carbohydrate. So people who eat sorghum actually has been shown to have better glucose control. So the carb to fiber ratio didn't pass. It has too many carbohydrates to fiber. I would imagine that it has a lot of sugar. That's probably why grain berries, right? Okay, so Ezekiel sprouted. Okay, this one has, look at that. Organic sprouted wheat, organic golden flaxseed, organic sprouted barley. Okay, so this one has a variety of grains. I really like that. It also has sprouted lentils. It has sprouted soybeans. So I really like this one because it has a variety of different grains and beans. It's also a relatively high protein food. It has like, I think, 7 grams of protein. And it meets the carb to fiber ratio, 5 to 1. So it has a little bit of added sugar, which is not bad. And honestly, kids probably won't eat this unless you added some sugar. This actually passed my test and I actually bought it. Now, this one, the next flavor, it has a bunch of sprouted grains and beans as well. It didn't actually pass the 5 to 1 test. Okay. But I still bought this one. Now, the next one, Sprouted Crunch Cereal, has also different types of grains and beans. Oh, it didn't pass. It was 3 points from not passing. Okay. Overall, I actually like this brand of cereal because it has a variety of different grains and it has beans. And it's really hard to find a cereal with whole beans, right? They usually purify a component of a bean, like some kind of protein of a bean, but they don't actually use the whole grain. Okay, so this is a Lovebird brand. It's grain-free cereal. It's made out of cassava roots, coconut. I'm not a big fan of coconut anymore because it is high in saturated fat. Okay. And I just don't want to build up saturated fat no matter what source it's from. Like all these cereals are full of saturated fat. And then they don't meet the fiber to carb ratio. Really don't like how it doesn't meet the fiber to carb ratio, right? There's so many cereals on the market. It's like it takes me forever to go through each of these boxes. But the take home message is I'm looking for variety, I'm looking for pure ingredients, I'm looking for low saturated fat, and I'm looking for cereals that meet the 5 to 1 carb to fiber ratio. Now, if it doesn't meet it, then I have to say it needs to be whole food. It needs to be a diversity of food. If I can achieve that diversity of food, then I'm going to get that cereal. After flipping out all these cereals in this store shelf, and I did this to 5 stores, I realized that if you go to a more expensive grocery store, you'll find better selection of cereals that are whole food. And if you go to like a Walmart or a Target, you're going to find it lined with sugary cereals, basically pure sugar. And if that's what you're looking for, then you'll find it, right? You get what you pay for. If you want a variety of ingredients, then going to a better supermarket will be worth your health. However, you still have to read these ingredients very carefully.
So I'm sure you're wondering what cereals that I bought. And I found them at Sprouts, Whole Foods, as well as Target. Now, I wanted to qualify my third rule of thumb, and I don't think people should be cheating to meet that fiber content. It's like eating your cereal and then swallowing a fiber supplement. I don't want a fiber supplement. I want my fiber to be in whole food form. So if you're adding chicory root fiber or inulin, that's not whole food. That's cheating. Now, I honestly don't know how that story is going to turn out because we know that fiber interacts with our gut microbiome. And I know that if you put specific components, if you megadose it, it's probably going to change what kind of bacteria you have in your gut. It's kind of like making an oral hydration solution. If you don't get the electrolyte ratios right, you can actually cause someone to be more dehydrated, even though you intended them to be more hydrated. So when you're working with isolated ingredients like isolated fibers, you are likely shifting that balance of your gut microbiota, which may not be in your favor. So I'm not a fan of eating isolated fibers, whether that's in bread or cereal. To me, isolated fibers is not a health food, but they're trying to make a processed food a little healthier. Now, there are cereals that do have whole food ingredients, like post-shredded wheat. It just has one ingredient. However, shredded wheat is not like a whole wheat grain. One has been shredded, and when you shred your packaging to protect your present, it's not going to look the same or function the same. Imagine for Christmas, I shredded the packaging and then I just threw it on your gift. Is it really going to hide the present? Are you going to really be able to hide it from your kids? I don't think so. So a functional wrapping paper needs to be like almost brand new, right? Like without any holes. And this is true with food in your body. When you change your food structure by shredding it, by making it into powder form, by extracting ingredients, that food will be metabolized differently in your body. And usually the digestion will be easier since you will be eating partially digested food. And that will go against the goals of weight loss and lower blood sugars. Eating cereals is really not the best path to go. But if you're eating highly processed foods like white bread and pastries, then eating some whole grain cereals can be a transition food to get to a better ultimate food structure, which is whole food and skipping these processing parts. Okay, so here are the cereals that I actually bought for my family. I've never actually tried them because I don't eat cereal. I wean myself off of this texture so I don't have the desire. So these cereals actually passed my test. So number one, they had no artificial ingredients. And number two, sugar was not in the first, second, or third ingredient.
And in the end, after searching through all these cereals, I bought 2 boxes for my kids to try, Ezekiel brand as well as the Heritage brand. And really, these cereals are for people who maybe have difficulties in absorbing foods, right? That's like the best way to use these cereals. If you're not eating well and you don't have an appetite to eat real food, then you can get a lot of nutrients from these cereals. But if you are eating whole food and you're not have problems with digestion, or you're not having issues with appetite, or struggling with, having energy, that kind of stuff, then I would say these are not foods that we should be eating on a regular basis. So occasional treat, really going to be harmful.
So this cereal is Heritage Flakes. Let me show you the ingredients on this cereal. Nutrition fact list. Okay, so if you look at the ingredients, it says that it has whole wheat flour, whole bran, whole wheat meal. So the first 2 and 3 are not sugar, right? Cane sugar is the fourth. And then if you look at the 5-to-1 carbohydrate ratio, it actually is pretty good. There's 7 grams of fiber and 31 grams of carbohydrates. So if I multiply 7 by 5, I should get 35. So it actually passes it. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay. All right. So it is basically, it looks kind of like cornflakes, maybe a little drier, less shiny, right? And they're pretty thin like cornflakes. This one's pretty big. You can actually scoop something in it. It's crunchy, but it's a hard crunch, like a corn tortilla chip crunch as opposed to a cornflake crunch. I think it has a little sweetness. I think it's still sweet. First thing my son did when I brought this box of cereal home was that he opened it because he was so surprised I bought cereal. I haven't bought any cereal for a very long time. And in fact, I've been throwing away any cereal that I find because you're usually not acceptable. He tried it and I asked him how he liked it and he said, it's okay. And then I said, well, is it sweet? It's like, not really. But I do actually taste that it is sweet. It's not overpowering sweet, but it is a very, very pleasant sweetness. I would minimize eating this just because I don't eat processed foods. And I know if I eat one serving of this is 1 cup. That's not enough food for me. I'm probably going to need like 2 or 3 cups, and that will pack on calories very fast. Okay, so that is Heritage Flakes. This is an exception to my 5-to-1 rule. So I bought this box of cereal. Let me show you. It is the Ezekiel brand. I usually wouldn't buy something that fails one of my rules. If you look at the ingredients, it says organic sprouted wheat, organic sliced almonds, organic sprouted barley, organic sprouted millet, organic sprouted lentils, organic sprouted soybeans, organic malted barley, organic sprouted spelt. I mean, it's full of, number one, sprouted grains, as well as beans. It's very rare that I find a cereal made out of whole beans, not like soy lecithin, right? That's an extract. This is made out of a whole bean. So if you look at its carb to fiber ratio, it actually doesn't pass the test. It has 6 grams of dietary fiber, but it has 34 grams of total carbohydrates. And that's mostly because grains have a lot of carbohydrates. And this is also a high protein source. Okay. So that's kind of really why I bought it. This has 8 grams of protein here, whereas this 1 cup, which is twice as this, has only 5 grams of protein, right? So this is 1 serving out of each of the box. The Heritage Flake says it is 160 calories. This is 200 calories, right? So this is calorie dense, right? Because it has whole grains as well as nuts. There's no nuts in here. So if you're counting calories, this will be more caloric. But if you're counting nutrition content, and this is also going to be more nutritious. So I'm going to try this cereal. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's not quite pickable with my fingers. I could pick it up, but it's going to be messy, right? This is something that's scoopable. It's in small pieces. It's like a granola, right? That's something you would sprinkle onto something. I used to eat granolas just like this, but it's a little messy. Okay, so I'm going to try it. I'm going to just pour it in my hand. This cereal is not as sweet as this one. Even though this one has more carbohydrates than this one, and this one failed my 5-to-1 carbohydrate ratio, this one has added sugar. This one has barley malt extract as well as cane sugar. That's why this is sweeter. This one doesn't have any added sugar. It does have malted barley, so that there's some maltose in that, but otherwise everything is in its whole food form. So between the two, this one definitely would be more nutritious and probably be a better weight controller than this one, because you're going to need to eat more of this to feel full. This is only 2.5 grams of protein, whereas this whole thing has 5 grams of protein, and this little half a cup already has 8 grams of protein. Now, in terms of fiber, both of these have 7 grams of fiber. This one has, I believe, 6 grams of fiber. But there is more whole food, more variety of foods in here than there are in this box of cereal. So this is what I'm saying, no rule is perfect. And this is why I talk about like the different ways in which you can look at your food products to pick the healthiest food to feed you and your family. And the reason why I keep mentioning fiber is that it is super important for our gut health and inflammation. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.